Ambassador Sarah Chen adjusted her formal uniform one last time before stepping into the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. The massive dome stretched high above her, its crystalline walls reflecting the light from 1,000 stars. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections, each area designed to accommodate their unique physiologies. The Zephyrians floated in their gas-filled pods, the crystalline collective pulsed with soft blue light, and the massive Drakmari delegates cast long shadows with their towering frames. Today marked humanity's formal application to join the Galactic Council as a full member species. After 3 years of preliminary negotiations and cultural exchanges, this was the moment that would determine Earth's place among the stars. Sarah had spent months preparing for this presentation, working with teams of xenobiologists, diplomats, and cultural experts to craft the perfect introduction to human civilization. The council chamber buzzed with anticipation. Humans had already proven themselves technologically capable, having developed faster-than-light travel independently and establishing trade relationships with several member species. But technology alone wasn't enough for council membership. The real test was demonstrating that humanity possessed the emotional maturity and social stability required for galactic citizenship. "The human delegation may begin their presentation," announced Councillor Vexithera, the council's current speaker. Her serpentine form coiled gracefully around her speaking platform, while her translator device rendered her hissing words into perfect, standard galactic. Sarah stepped forward to the central podium, feeling the weight of billions of human hopes resting on her shoulders. Behind her, a massive holographic display came to life, ready to showcase humanity's greatest achievements, cultural diversity, and peaceful intentions. "Honored counselors," Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustics. "I stand before you today not just as a representative of Earth, but as a voice for all humanity. We come seeking not dominance or special privilege, but partnership in the great work of building a peaceful and prosperous galaxy." The presentation began flawlessly. Sarah guided the council through humanity's history, carefully emphasizing moments of cooperation, scientific discovery, and cultural achievement. She spoke of the Renaissance, the space program, international humanitarian efforts, and the peaceful resolution of global conflicts. The holographic display showed images of human art, music, literature, and the diverse tapestry of cultures that made up Earth's population. Several counselors nodded approvingly as Sarah explained humanity's commitment to nonviolence and diplomatic solutions. She highlighted the United Nations, international law, and humanity's record of protecting endangered species and preserving their environment. The presentation painted humans as a mature, thoughtful species, ready to take their place among the galactic community. "Our species has learned to overcome our differences," Sarah continued, clicking to a slide showing the International Space Station. "We work together across national, cultural, and ideological boundaries to achieve common goals. This same spirit of cooperation has driven our space exploration efforts and our peaceful first contact protocols with your species." The Crystalline Collective's representative pulsed a warm amber, indicating approval. The Aquatic Federation's delegate gestured with what Sarah had learned was their equivalent of a smile. Even the notoriously skeptical Mechanoid Assembly seemed engaged. Their optical sensors focused intently on her presentation. As Sarah moved into the final section of her formal presentation, she felt confident that humanity was making a strong impression. The Council's questions had been thoughtful and generally positive. Several delegates had expressed interest in cultural exchange programs and expanded trade relationships. "In conclusion," Sarah said, "humanity requests the honor of joining this council not as conquerors or competitors, but as partners in peace. We bring our creativity, our diversity, and our unwavering commitment to the principles of cooperation and mutual respect that define this great assembly." The presentation ended to what Sarah interpreted as polite applause, though the sounds varied dramatically across species. Counselor Vexithara coiled higher on her platform, preparing to begin the formal questioning period that would determine humanity's fate. "The presentation was most illuminating, Ambassador Chen," Vexithara said. "The Council is impressed by humanity's technological achievements and stated commitment to peaceful coexistence. However, before we proceed to formal deliberations, we must address certain concerns that have been raised about human emotional stability." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't part of the expected questioning format. "I would be happy to address any concerns, Counselor. We have been monitoring your species' communications networks as part of our standard evaluation process," continued Vexithara. "While your formal diplomatic channels maintain appropriate decorum, we have observed concerning patterns in your civilian population's behavior, particularly during times of stress or disagreement." The massive display behind Sarah suddenly flickered to life without her input. Images began streaming across it, pulled directly from Earth's internet and social media platforms. Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized what the Council was seeing. Videos of road rage incidents played in stark detail. Humans screaming at each other over minor traffic disputes, their faces contorted with rage that seemed entirely disproportionate to the situation. Security camera footage from retail stores showed customers having complete meltdowns over simple inconveniences, throwing merchandise and berating employees who were clearly trying their best to help. The display shifted to political rallies where humans chanted hateful slogans and waved signs promoting violence against their fellow citizens. Comment sections from news articles scrolled past, filled with death threats and vicious personal attacks over minor policy disagreements. Sports event footage showed fans literally rioting and destroying property because their team lost a game. Sarah watched in horror as the Council observed humans at their absolute worst. Videos of Black Friday shopping stampedes showed people trampling each other for discounted electronics. Parents screaming at youth soccer games over referee calls. Viral videos of plane passengers having complete psychological breakdowns over seat assignments or minor delays. The chamber fell into complete silence as the display continued its relentless showcase of human anger, pettiness, and irrational behavior. Social media arguments escalated into real-world violence. Road rage incidents that ended in actual physical assault, customers attacking service workers over mask requirements or store policies completely beyond those workers' control. "This is what concerns us, Ambassador Chen," Vexithara said, her voice now carrying a distinctly cooler tone. "Your formal presentation speaks of cooperation and peaceful resolution of conflicts, yet your own people regularly display extreme aggression over the most trivial of matters. How do you explain this contradiction?" Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. She had prepared for questions about humanity's wars, their environmental challenges, their political differences. But she had never expected the Council to focus on the everyday incivility that had become so commonplace on Earth that most people barely noticed it anymore. The other Council members began murmuring among themselves, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of concern throughout the chamber. The Drakmari delegate's deep voice rumbled with what Sarah recognized as disapproval. The ethereal collective's representative flickered with rapid color changes that indicated distress. "These displays of aggression appear to be triggered by minor inconveniences," observed the Mechanoid Assembly's delegate, its voice flat and analytical. "Logic suggests that a species this prone to emotional volatility would pose significant risks in galactic cooperation scenarios. Furthermore," added the Aquatic Federation's representative through their translation device, The apparent randomness of these aggressive outbursts indicates a fundamental instability in human social structures. How can we trust diplomatic agreements with a species that cannot maintain basic civility in their daily interactions? Sarah finally found her voice, though it came out weaker than she had intended. Honorable counselors, what you're seeing represents a small fraction of human interactions. The vast majority of our daily encounters are peaceful and cooperative. These incidents, while regrettable, are not representative of our species as a whole. But even as she spoke the words, Sarah knew how hollow they sounded. The footage continued playing, and it wasn't just a few isolated incidents. The display showed patterns of behavior that were undeniably widespread across human civilization. Customer service interactions that devolved into screaming matches. Social media platforms filled with anonymous cruelty and harassment. Public transportation where humans regularly ignored basic courtesy and respect for their fellow passengers. We observe that your own diplomatic protocols strictly regulate behavior in formal settings, noted Counselor Vexathera. This suggests that humans are capable of controlling these impulses when consequences are clear and immediate. However, galactic cooperation requires consistent civility even when formal oversight is absent. The weight of the situation began to settle on Sarah's shoulders like a crushing burden. Humanity's application wasn't being rejected because of their wars or their environmental problems or their political divisions. They were being judged unfit for galactic citizenship because they couldn't be trusted to maintain basic courtesy and respect in their everyday lives. The irony was devastating. Humans had conquered space travel, developed incredible technologies, created beautiful art and literature, and established complex global institutions for cooperation and peace. But they were failing the galactic community's most basic requirement, the ability to treat each other with consistent dignity and respect, even during minor disagreements or everyday stress. As the display finally faded to black, Sarah stood alone in the vast chamber, representing a species that had just revealed its fundamental flaw to the entire galaxy. The silence stretched endlessly as 47 different species contemplated what they had witnessed, and Sarah struggled to find words that could possibly salvage humanity's future among the stars. The silence in the council chamber stretched for what felt like an eternity. Sarah could feel the weight of thousands of eyes, sensors, and other perceptual organs focused on her, waiting for some explanation that could make sense of what they had just witnessed. The massive holographic displays that had shown humanity's darkest moments now stood dark and accusatory, like tombstones marking the death of Earth's galactic ambitions. Ambassador Chen, Counselor Vexathera finally spoke, her serpentine voice carrying across the chamber with careful neutrality. The Council recognizes that you may need time to formulate a response to these concerning observations. However, we must point out that similar behavioral patterns have led to the rejection of 3 previous species applications for membership. Sarah's heart sank further as she processed this information. Humanity wasn't the first species to fail this particular test. Somewhere in the galaxy, 3 other civilizations had been deemed too unstable for galactic citizenship based on their inability to maintain basic civility in daily life. "May I ask," Sarah said, struggling to keep her voice steady, "what happened to those other species?" "They remain in isolation," replied the Crystalline Collective's representative, their form pulsing a deep blue that Sarah had learned indicated sadness. "Cut off from galactic trade, technological exchange, and cultural development. They continue to exist, but they cannot participate in the broader community of civilized worlds." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Rejection wouldn't just mean losing the opportunity to join the Council. It would mean humanity being quarantined from the rest of galactic civilization, left to develop alone while other species advance together. Earth would become a backwater planet, forever watching the stars but never truly reaching them. However, continued Counselor Vexithara, the Council has developed a new protocol since those previous rejections. We have come to understand that some species may possess the capacity for growth and development in areas where they currently fall short. A spark of hope ignited in Sarah's chest. What kind of protocol? A period of guided observation and cultural mentorship, explained the ethereal collective's representative, their form shifting through colors that indicated careful consideration. Rather than immediate rejection, we propose a trial period during which humanity would work under Council supervision to address the behavioral concerns we have observed. The massive Drakmari delegate leaned forward, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. This would not be membership, but probationary status. Humans would have access to limited Council resources and guidance, but no voting rights or full participation privileges until they demonstrate sustained improvement in civilian behavior patterns. Sarah felt a mix of relief and humiliation. It was better than outright rejection, but the terms were hardly flattering. Humanity would essentially be put on galactic probation, like a troubled child being supervised until they could prove they deserved to sit at the adult table. What would this supervision entail? Sarah asked. Council observers would be stationed on Earth and in human colonies, replied the Aquatic Federation's delegate. They would monitor social interactions, provide guidance on conflict resolution, and help implement cultural changes designed to reduce aggressive responses to minor stresses. Additionally, added the Mechanoid Assembly's representative, humans would be required to demonstrate measurable improvement in public behavior metrics over a period of 50 Earth years. Success would lead to full membership consideration. Failure would result in permanent isolation. 50 years. Sarah calculated quickly in her head. It would be multiple human generations before Earth could even reapply for full membership. Children not yet born would inherit the consequences of humanity's current inability to be consistently civil to each other. I need to consult with Earth's leadership before accepting these terms, Sarah said carefully. This decision affects the entire future of our species. Of course, agreed Counselor Vexithara. However, we must inform you that this offer has a limited time frame. The Council session will conclude in 72 Earth hours. If humanity does not accept probationary status by that time, the application will be rejected permanently. As the Council session recessed for deliberation, Sarah found herself in her assigned quarters aboard the Council station, frantically composing messages to Earth's leadership. How could she explain that humanity's greatest weakness wasn't their wars or their environmental problems, but their simple inability to be kind to each other on a consistent basis? Her communication device chimed with an incoming priority message from Secretary General Martinez back on Earth. Sarah opened the connection, and Martinez's concerned face appeared on the screen. Sarah, we've been monitoring the proceedings through the diplomatic channels. What happened in there? The preliminary reports suggest some kind of behavioral assessment issue? Sarah took a deep breath. They showed the Council footage from our own internet and social media platforms: road rage, customer service meltdowns, social media harassment, sports riots, all the everyday incivility that we've become so accustomed to that we barely notice it anymore. Martinez's expression shifted from confusion to horror. You mean they judged us based on viral videos of people having bad days? It's not just viral videos, sir. They conducted a comprehensive analysis of human behavior patterns. The evidence suggests that humans are fundamentally unable to maintain consistent civility during minor stress or disagreement. From their perspective, this makes us unsuitable for galactic cooperation. The Secretary General was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. What are our options? They're offering probationary status. 50 years of supervised cultural development with Council observers monitoring our behavior. If we improve significantly, we can reapply for full membership. If we don't, We face permanent isolation from galactic civilization. 50 years, Martinez repeated slowly. That's longer than most humans live. Yes, sir. This wouldn't be solved in our lifetime. We'd be committing future generations to prove that humanity can learn to treat each other with consistent respect and dignity. Another long silence filled the communication channel. Sarah could see Martinez grappling with the implications, just as she had been doing since the session ended. Sarah, in your professional opinion as our primary xenological diplomat, what do you think we should do? Sarah had been dreading this question, but she knew her answer. Sir, I think we have to accept their offer. The alternative is complete isolation from the galactic community. No trade, no technology exchange, no cultural development opportunities. We'd be stuck in our current solar system forever while the rest of the galaxy advances without us. But accepting means admitting that our entire civilization has a fundamental behavioral problem. Yes, sir, it does. And honestly, after seeing the footage they compiled, I think they might be right. The admission felt like betraying her own species, but Sarah knew it was true. How many times had she witnessed humans being needlessly cruel to service workers, exploding into rage over minor inconveniences, or engaging in vicious online harassment campaigns over trivial disagreements? She had always dismissed these incidents as isolated examples of people having bad days, but the Council's comprehensive analysis revealed patterns that were impossible to ignore. What would this probationary period actually look like? Martinez asked. Council observers would be embedded in our societies. They'd monitor public behavior, provide guidance on conflict resolution, and help us develop cultural practices that promote consistent civility. Think of it as galactic anger management therapy for an entire species. That sounds incredibly invasive. It is. But the alternative is permanent isolation. Sir, this isn't just about us. This is about every future generation of humans. Do we condemn our children and grandchildren to stay trapped in this solar system because we can't admit that we have a problem with basic courtesy? Martinez rubbed his forehead, clearly struggling with the weight of the decision. I need to call an emergency session of the Global Council. This affects every nation on Earth, and we need unanimous agreement to move forward. Sir, we only have 72 hours to respond. I understand. Sarah, I want you to prepare a detailed briefing on exactly what this probationary status would entail. Every detail, every requirement, every potential consequence. If we're going to make this decision, we need to understand exactly what we're committing to. As the communication ended, Sarah slumped back in her chair, emotionally exhausted. She had spent her entire career preparing for humanity's entry into galactic civilization, but she had never imagined it would come down to something as basic as learning to be nice to each other. Her personal communication device chimed with a message from her daughter back on Earth. Mom, saw the news feeds about the council presentation. How did it go? Sarah stared at the message for a long time before typing her response. It's complicated, sweetheart. We might have some growing up to do as a species before we're ready for the stars. Outside her quarters viewport, the lights of the council station twinkled against the backdrop of space, representing dozens of civilizations that had successfully passed the tests that humanity was failing. For the first time since arriving at the station, Sarah wondered if her species truly deserved to join them, or if they needed to earn that privilege through fundamental changes to who they were as people. The next 72 hours would determine not just humanity's immediate future, but whether the human race would choose to confront its own behavioral shortcomings or remain forever isolated by its inability to consistently treat its own members with basic dignity and respect. The Global Council chambers in Geneva had never hosted a more consequential emergency session. Representatives from every nation on Earth filled the assembly hall, their faces reflecting the weight of the decision before them. Sarah watched the proceedings through a secure video link from the council station, having transmitted her detailed briefing to Earth's leadership 12 hours earlier. Secretary General Martinez stood at the central podium, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Distinguished delegates, we face an unprecedented choice. The Galactic Council has offered humanity probationary membership, contingent on our willingness to accept supervision and demonstrate measurable improvement in our civilian behavior patterns over the next 50 years. The Chinese representative raised her hand. Secretary General, this proposal essentially asks us to submit to alien oversight of our internal social dynamics. What guarantees do we have that this supervision won't become permanent control? Sarah activated her communication link from the council station. Delegate Wu, I can address that concern. The council's observers would have no governing authority. Their role would be purely advisory and educational. They cannot make laws, impose regulations, or interfere with national sovereignty. They can only observe, report, and provide guidance when requested. The Russian delegate leaned forward. But they would be monitoring our citizens' daily interactions. This raises serious privacy and cultural autonomy concerns. That's correct, Sarah acknowledged. However, I must point out that they're already monitoring our communications networks. The difference is that under probationary status, this monitoring would come with the benefit of guidance and the possibility of eventual full membership. Rejection means they stop monitoring because we become irrelevant to galactic affairs. A murmur of uncomfortable realization swept through the chamber. The stark reality was that humanity's privacy had already been compromised by virtue of their application for council membership. The question wasn't whether they would be observed, but whether that observation would come with opportunities for growth and eventual acceptance. The Brazilian representative stood. Ambassador Chen, in your professional assessment, what are the realistic chances that humanity can actually meet these behavioral standards? Sarah paused, considering her words carefully. This was perhaps the most important question she would ever answer. Delegate Santos, I believe we can succeed, but only if we make fundamental changes to how we approach conflict resolution and stress management in our daily lives. The Council isn't asking us to eliminate all disagreement or conflict. They're asking us to demonstrate that we can disagree respectfully and handle minor stresses without resorting to aggression or cruelty. The Japanese representative activated his microphone. What specific changes would be required? Based on my discussions with Council observers, we would need to implement comprehensive conflict resolution training in our educational systems, establish stronger social consequences for public incivility, and develop cultural norms that prioritize de-escalation over confrontation. Essentially, we need to make kindness and courtesy as socially valued as intelligence or strength. The Canadian delegate raised a concern that had been weighing on many minds. Ambassador, this sounds like we're being asked to fundamentally alter human nature. Is that even possible? Sarah took a deep breath before responding. Delegate Thompson, I don't think they're asking us to alter human nature. They're asking us to take conscious control of our responses rather than acting on impulse. Humans already demonstrate remarkable self-control in many contexts. We don't physically assault our bosses when we disagree with them, even though we might feel the urge to do so. We don't steal from stores just because we want something we can't afford, even though the opportunity might present itself. What the Council wants to see is that same level of conscious self-regulation applied to everyday social interactions. The Secretary General gestured for attention. Delegates, we have 18 hours remaining before our response deadline. I want to hear final positions from each regional bloc before we proceed to a vote. The European Union's representative spoke first. The EU delegation supports acceptance of probationary status. While the terms are humbling, the alternative of permanent isolation is unacceptable. We believe European social democratic traditions provide a foundation for the kind of civil society the Council wishes to see developed. The African Union delegate followed. Africa has extensive experience with international oversight and development programs. We understand that accepting external guidance doesn't diminish sovereignty if it leads to genuine improvement. We support acceptance. The debate continued for hours, with each regional bloc weighing in on humanity's choice. Some expressed concerns about cultural imperialism and the loss of human autonomy. Others argued that isolation would be a far worse fate than supervised development. As the discussions progressed, Sarah noticed something remarkable happening in the chamber. The delegates weren't shouting at each other or engaging in the kind of aggressive rhetoric that typically characterized high-stakes political debates. Instead, they were listening carefully to different viewpoints, asking clarifying questions, and building on each other's ideas. Almost as if they were unconsciously demonstrating the very behavior the Galactic Council wanted to see more of. The Indian representative made a particularly insightful observation. Colleagues, perhaps we should consider that this crisis represents an opportunity. How many of our domestic problems stem from our inability to disagree respectfully? Political polarization, social media harassment, workplace conflicts, family disputes that escalate beyond reason. If we can learn to handle everyday stress and disagreement more civilly, we don't just gain galactic membership. We improve life for every human being. This perspective seemed to resonate throughout the chamber. The conversation gradually shifted from viewing the Council's requirements as an external imposition to recognizing them as goals that would benefit humanity regardless of galactic politics. As the final hour of debate approached, Secretary General Martinez called for closing statements. Sarah requested permission to address the Assembly one last time. "Distinguished delegates," she began, "I've spent the last 3 years studying galactic civilization, and I've learned something important about the species that successfully joined the Council. They didn't achieve membership because they were perfect. They achieved it because they demonstrated the capacity for growth and the commitment to becoming better versions of themselves." She paused, looking at the faces of Earth's leaders through her video connection. "The Council's behavioral standards aren't arbitrary rules imposed by aliens who don't understand humanity. They're the prerequisites for any civilization that wants to cooperate peacefully with 47 other species, each with their own cultures, biologies, and perspectives. If we can't maintain basic civility with members of our own species, how can we be trusted to treat alien civilizations with respect?" The Japanese delegate raised his hand. "Ambassador, what gives you confidence that we can actually succeed?" Sarah smiled for the first time in days. "This debate gives me confidence. Look around this chamber. You're discussing the most important decision in human history with representatives from every culture and political system on Earth, and you're doing it with respect, patience, and genuine consideration for different viewpoints. You're demonstrating exactly the kind of behavior the Council wants to see become normal for humanity." A moment of realization seemed to pass through the Assembly. They had been modeling the solution to humanity's problem without even realizing it. Secretary General Martinez called for the final vote. "All those in favor of accepting the Galactic Council's offer of probationary membership, please indicate." Hands rose throughout the chamber, delegation by delegation, until the result was overwhelming. 193 nations voted in favor of acceptance, with only 4 abstentions and no votes against. Sarah felt tears of relief streaming down her face as she opened a communication channel to Counselor Vexithera. "Honored Counselor, humanity accepts the terms of probationary membership. We understand the requirements and commit ourselves to the process of demonstrating improved civilian behavior standards." "We are pleased by this decision, Ambassador Chen," Vexithera replied. "Council observers will arrive on Earth within 1 standard cycle to begin the cultural mentorship program. We look forward to watching humanity grow into the civilization we believe you have the potential to become." As the communication ended, Sarah realized that today marked both a humbling acknowledgement of humanity's shortcomings and the beginning of their greatest challenge. They had 50 years to prove that a species could consciously evolve beyond its worst impulses and earn its place among the stars through nothing more complicated than learning to be consistently kind to each other. The irony wasn't lost on her that humanity's ticket to the galaxy would be earned not through advanced technology or military might, but through the simple act of treating each other with the dignity and respect that every conscious being deserved. It was perhaps the most human challenge imaginable, becoming worthy of their own highest aspirations by finally learning to live up to them in their daily lives. Looking out at the stars from her quarters aboard the Council station, Sarah felt hopeful for the first time since the crisis began. Humanity had chosen the hard path of growth over the easy path of isolation. Now the real work would begin. But for the first time in human history, they wouldn't be working alone. They would have teachers, guides, and eventually, if they succeeded, partners among the stars. The age of human galactic citizenship had begun not with triumph, but with wisdom. And perhaps, Sarah thought, that was exactly how it should be.